everyone. I'm going to get some logistics here as we get started. I will tell you a little bit about myself as we get into the mix of this, but I've known Regina and Rick for a while now. I'm a South Floridian. I think those are the fun things to talk about right now. I am highly passionate about when it comes to people and bringing the benefits of life coaching and really making us whole as people, because we know what we've gone through in the last 2 years. There's no difference between personal and professional anymore, right? And so when it comes to the complexities of humans and what do we do with that, this is where I've got completely fascinated, and I'll share a little bit of my story as we get into this. And my background has continuously progressed since I even got into Agile as an Agile coach. I've got into neuroscience, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and everything a lot when it comes to science-based approaches to answer some of these puzzles that I had when it comes to the complexity of human and human behavior and change. And so I'm very happy to share my learning journey with you tonight. Let me get some logistics on the share here. I started staging it, but I just want to make sure it's okay. So one quick second here. All right, so I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know that it worked. Do we get a thumbs up here, everyone?
Yeah,
awesome.
You can see it.
Okay, let me move my control panel out of the way. That might be nice. Okay. All right, so today we're going to actually talk about how to influence and motivate teams. Yes, simply by the power of words. And we've already known for a while what we say, is powerful. You've heard it out there in the universe and a lot of people posting, but we're gonna look at it maybe in a different way and maybe the same way. And so I'll start with this. Oops, let me make sure it's changing. There we go. So the human brain consists of 1 billion neurons.
Wow.
And your brain uses perception in order to understand information received. And in simple words, the interpretation your brain makes based on what you see, hear, smell, feel, taste, and how that correlates to previous memories. Now, remember that old saying, sticks and bones might break my bones, but words would never hurt me? Remember that? Well, science tells us that's actually has a tremendous impact on us. Believe it or not. And if I were to tell you not to think of a blue tree, what happened just now, everyone? I bet you saw blue in that tree, didn't you? And that's right, because our brain doesn't understand negative connotations. And so I'll let you simmer on that one for a while as we jump into our topic today. So if words do matter, what does that mean when we communicate to others who may have different ways they perceive the information by the very words you utter? So that's pretty powerful, right? And so this is a quote from the woman that I'm going to share, what she's actually done with a method called the lab profile, which is about language and behavior. And she says you can take almost any human attitude, quality or behavior, and understand components and figure out how to have an influence. And so our journey begins. Isn't that cute? So you probably are wondering, right, Veronica, this sounds great, but how do you do this? And so first, we listen. Second, we go to the person's bus stop, right, folks? There's a reason why that bus is there. And the bus stop, meaning we meet them where they are in their mental model world and how they perceive things. And third, we say the right words to get them motivated to decide to get on that bus and join our world on how we perceive it. And the key is not to just listen like we've learned through the years, what we call active listening or building rapport. Yes, I'm going to say that's important, but we're going to take it further to listen how people are saying things. And again, that's how they're saying things. And so here's it. This is one of my favorite books out there. And I became quite obsessed with it for a lot of reasons. And I'll probably explain my little journey here in a second. Is I found this book searching on Amazon, some keywords around my puzzle around how to influence change. I'm someone that loves change. I'm someone that it's very easy for me to talk about change. And so I have and I see these possibilities, and I go into environments, and you'll understand why this conundrum I had when we get into some of these motivations, why it was so hard for me. And so I see something, and how I communicate and talk is based on how I see. And so the words that I form are always related to that thought pattern. And so I read this book twice, probably 3 times in truth. And I've joined her business influencing program. And I'm honestly, seriously, even taking it further. I absolutely love Shell's work. She's a highly creative, and she's done amazing things with this lab profile, to put it in many ways. And she's even created, I kid you not, a husband motivator app out there. This is how inventive this woman is. Now there are 14 patterns, as you see here on the slide, that's mastering the language influence, which is divided into motivation and productivity. And so today we're going to actually learn the 6 patterns of motivation today, because that's really, if you think about it logically, you got to motivate someone to first, and then you can work on sustaining it, right? The productivity pattern. So it makes sense to start with motivation, right? So that's what we're going to do today. Now, here is what to expect. So we're going to learn about the lab profile and those 6 motivation patterns. We're going to learn about one of the techniques that she has created, which is the suggestion model. And then I'm going to leave you with a bonus of the 3-2-1 sandwich. I love that saying. And we're going to practice the suggestion model. So you're going to get your feet wet on that. And then we're going to finish sharing that experience, and then practice it again together and other ways to motivate. So how it's going to work, we're going to go through each one. We're going to learn about it in this discussion presentation mode. So please ask any of your questions as we go through and talk about it. Then we're going to go into Mural. I have it already ready, and we're going to practice in some groups. So I have that set up for everyone, and I'll share that link when we get to that point. And again, we're going to finish up and practice, and then we're going to wrap up where I'm going to talk about keys to success. And when it comes to these motivation patterns, I'm going to share some ways how it actually can be used. And then going to provide that 3-2-1 sandwich bonus for all of you. Now, here's the most important thing about me, right? No. So, hi. Again, you know what? My name is Veronica. So what I do is I help leaders evolve to outcome-based cultures. And again, there's that science-based thing that all of you are hearing when it comes to transformational solutions and OKRs in the organization. That's what I really do today. That's where my energy is and where I love doing. But the thing is, I'm a game changer polisher. And what that really means is I put my energy into change and continuous improvement. That is my thing. And my superpower is helping others get unstuck. As a game changer I am, and seeing the possibilities and building that momentum to sustain that journey, which we all know we might run out of gas to do. And so I help keep that fuel and help that motivation. And so that's really my superpower, is helping people really get unstuck when they really want to do different. Now, the other things, you see my fur baby there. I live a half a mile away from the beach. So those of you, Delray Beach, familiar, that are in Florida, that's where I live. Of course, I love warm weather. I live in Florida, so that's an easy one, right? And one of my fun facts is I learned how to actually make my homemade body butter. And someone said, "Are you going to start selling this?" And I was like, "No, then it wouldn't be any fun." So I actually have a couple people that I actually make it for as my gifts of love. And it's a lot of fun because it's nice to know that people like it. So that's my little fun fact about me. Now, let's get into the motivation patterns. Now, I'm going to spend a little time on this slide, and then we're going to go into deeper about these. And so the interesting thing about these motivation patterns is that it's not necessarily as hard as you might think. And Regina's been graciously to be my demonstrator on a couple of them here in a little bit. So we have levels of activity. And so there's really, this is where you can pay attention to the person's sentence and structure and body language and really understand what they're doing. Are they waiting for others to take initiative? Or are they waiting, for others to act? Are they going to do it on their own? Or are they waiting for others, right? It's the people, the wait and see, or the ones that are actually going to go do. Then you have the criteria. And so this is the words that actually have a physical reaction to, it's either physical or mental emotion response when they hear particular words. And so this is one that's going to be really key. And I'll talk about this a little more. And because some of you might have learned when you repeat back an understanding, this is the misnomer if you probably switch it and do it this way when you're trying to connect with people. So there's direction on what triggers somebody into action. And so we're going to learn about that. Then we're going to learn about the source, which is really, where does a person find motivation? Are they motivated externally, or are they motivated internally based on their beliefs, right? And then we have how they reason. And so this is where, are they reasoning where they're finding alternatives and options, or are they highly procedural in the way that they're reasoning things? And then lastly is how we're motivated in our decision factors. And so this one is key for all of us that are in Agile, because we're a lot about change and we're doing different things, right? And so I actually made a couple slides on this one. And this is how a person reacts to change and the frequency of change is needed. And I'm going to share some statistics around this one that might perk your ears and eyes tonight. So these are the 6 motivational patterns. So are we ready to dive into our first one, the level of activity? All right. Now, ask your questions. Please don't feel free to stop me if you need any clarifying questions as we get through. So again, the thing about these is once we actually pay attention to how people are saying, we can actually learn all of these 6 things. It's quite amazing. And we don't have to do any assessments. So here's the level of activity. Now, this one is interesting because there really is no specific question to ask for this one, but this is where you can pay attention to a person's sentence structure and body language. And here there are 2 types when we talk about level of activity. Now, this one is probably a head spin if some of you are used to some leadership type things. You know how we learned like reactive, creative leadership. So this, you're going to have to change some of that thinking because it's a little opposite here. I'm just giving you a little disclaimer, some folks, is that proactive. These are people, if you were to pay attention to how they're talking, they have short sentences. They speak if they're in control of the world. They have crisp, clear sentence structure. They're very direct. And at the extreme, they could bulldoze. And so these are people that are very like boom, 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 boom. Now, if I look on the reactive side, they're motivated a little bit different on their level activity. And so they could talk in incomplete sentences, subject or verbs are missing. And again, if the language they're speaking isn't their first language, you might have to peel the onion a little back on that one. They use passive verbs transform into nouns. There's lots of infinitives. They speak as the world controls them. So you see the difference? The other one speaks that they have control of the world, while the reactive one speaks that they don't have control of the world. And if you hear how people are talking, you can pick that up. And so they talk about thinking and analyzing and understanding and waiting, right? They got to think about things before they act. And then they're overly cautious and they need to understand and analyze. Now, when we think about influencing language, I gave you some examples down for each one of them. So I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to how I work, I'm proactive. So the words that I use, go for it, jump for it, why wait now, right away, get it done, take the initiative, right? What are you waiting for? That might not work with someone that's reactive. But my natural go-to, how I speak in my mental model and how I perceive information in my model of my world, where my bus stop is, those are probably the words I would use, right? Natural flow. But if I'm talking to someone that's reactive, it's probably not a good idea. And so these are words that we could use, like, let's think about it, right? Now that you have analyzed it, you get it, really understand, right? Coming your way. These are just examples. And so just knowing that and changing how you say something in the words is pretty profound if you're trying to motivate someone in the way they get, the level of activity, right? Because if you're talking to someone, for example, in a situation that is highly proactive and they want to do something really quick, and you're not having something that's going to give them results, they're going to get impatient, right? That thinking about it probably isn't going to work from them, right? They want immediate. So here's an example of people that out there. That buyer's remorse, when people buy something really quick and then they change their mind because they quickly react to it. Who do you think they are? Proactive or reactive? Come on.
Proactive.
Right. They're proactive because they're very direct. They want to get it done. They have the mentality, hey, I can do it, right? Now, when the dust settles, they might be the ones that are wishy-washy. Okay. They start thinking about it and they might change their mind. Reactive are the ones that think it through. Now, if we were to think of a customer and we were thinking about building loyalty, which one do you think at the end of the day probably be less wishy-washy and more committed? The proactive or the reactive?
Proactive.
Reactive.
Reactive.
And why do you think the reactive?
They thought it through.
Yeah. So if we're dealing in transformation and leaders or groups of people, that if you had in the ideal customer and client, it's great for people that are proactive and they want to sign that contract and get you in and what might have you. But if you probably pay attention to the rest of the story on them, they're probably a little wish-washy, once you get in there and they're all over the place. Where the person that's reactive really put a lot of thought into it and they're probably committed in the long haul through the whole process. So how many of you have ever dealt with people where that, like, you sign up for a fitness program and then they're all about it, they're gung-ho, and then they phase out? Where the reactive person probably thought about it a lot, and even though they were hesitant, but once they got into it, they were committed because they didn't impulsively make that decision. So there's a little bit there to kind of see on that. So there's pluses and bonuses on this. So it's not always a negative thing. If we are needing to get to action on something and not overthink, who do we probably need in the room?
The proactive type of person.
Yeah, we need
Proactive.
some motivated patterns in that room, because if we have a highly group of reactive people, do you think we're probably ever going to do anything? We're going to have a hard time getting to action, aren't we?
Veronica, here's a question. Would you say that not all of us are 100% proactive all the time or reactive all the time, and that perhaps some, based on the situation, are a little bit more proactive at times and a little bit more reactive at times?
Yes. And so actually what it is and the percentages, it's highly contextual. So you could, and this is in the context. So if say you're working in a team, right? And so the essence of the teamwork, that's a very particular context. I might act something in a way while I'm working, but when I go home, I might be different. That's a different context. Okay. So this is the thing, what I love about it, that it's not an assessment. This is based on context. And so when you start cueing in based on a very contextual situation, you can find out the person's mental model. And so when we go into all of these motivation patterns, it's highly contextual to what you are actually doing at the moment or asking about them in the conversation. And this is the beauty of it. It's real time and contextual, and you can pick this up. See, the thing with a lot of these assessments that are out there, it depends on what they're measuring, could be contextual. And you might not be that way every situation. If you ever did an assessment and you're like, well, I'm not always like that. I'm a little bit different sometimes. This actually is agnostic of that, because this is based on you finding out the context right then and there, and then determining that. And so this is one of a level of activity of do it now or have to think about when it comes to being motivated. That's just one. Now here's the next one. Criteria. Now these are the words or phrases. Let me get my screen here a little bit bigger. So these are the words or phrases that incite physical or emotional response. And so while you're talking and asking questions to people, these are some of the questions to elicit criteria. To give you an example, and Regina, you're going to be my person, and when we do this, after we do the next one. So what do you want from your job, right? What do you want in ... What's important to you? What counts? What has been there? When the people actually say the words, you want to capture that. So how many of you ever learned where you are doing this and you know how you're supposed to repeat back to make sure that you understand something? How many of you repeat back the way that you think you heard versus the words they used? Yeah. Well,
I like doing that sometimes. Yeah.
yeah. So if you're trying to meet someone in their bus stop and influence them, this is where we say, no, we want to use their words. And I'm going to show you that, because using a person's word incites a physical, emotional response to motivate them, because you're using their language and their mental models of something. So imagine me being someone completely opposite to who I'm talking, and I use words and descriptions that are my mental model, and I'm talking to a reactive person. Do you think they're probably going to feel what I just said? Probably not. And so we'll give an example on that in a minute. So these are what we call the hot buttons. So I use this today. Give an example. I use this today. I had someone today ask me how to use control charts in Jira. She said, can I have a meeting with you? Because I'm trying to understand this. And so my first thing was asking her, what did she want to focus on? And so she said, I had 2 projects, and I get really curious. I ask questions. And so I literally have the notes here from that conversation today. I wrote down exactly what she wanted to focus on and asked her why it was important to her. And so when I repeated back what I thought it was important to her, I could see the physical of her face. I just created a connection with her, and she kind of leaned in. And so this is where I hit her hot button saying, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I got her, right? She was like, yes, that's what I want to do. So that was where I met her where she was. I made sure that I repeated what she needed in her criteria, figured out what was important to her before I jumped in to all my ideas and all the things that I wanted to do. So we naturally do this with people saying, hey, how can I help you? What's your problem, right? But the key is when you are repeating back to ensure that you heard them correctly, use their words, not your words. Now, she did say something in the conversation, because you're probably asking, well, what happens if I'm trying to understand what they said? No, you can ask a clarifying question. So in my conversation with her, she made a comment about, well, we're not doing these agile things, right? And I said, Christina, can I ask a clarifying question? What do you mean by these agile things? I know, when people say that, I want to understand what agile things means to you. And she gave me a clarifying response to it. And I have it down on my notes. waterfall process. That's what she meant. So I use those exact words. And she's like, yeah. So I use this a lot these days. And when I don't, I just lost a moment to connect with people and meet them where they are. These are hot buttons. Now, we're going to learn why those exact words and really understanding what people are saying when we start using that suggestion model here. So direction, that's the carrot or the stick. And so we have 40% people are mainly toward and 40% are mainly away. So that means only 20% of the population is equally toward and away from. So you have pretty much a 50-50 chance that you're going to get somebody, right, in the room, somebody toward or away from. And so what we're going to learn today in that suggestion model is actually going to deal with both of these so that you hit it. And so the toward is talking about what they gain, they achieve, what they want to have. They're very goal oriented, right? They're in that mindset. And so they use those words, right? And so away from, these are the people that always want to work on the problem. It's always moving away from something. And again, this is highly contextual. So if we're talking about work, think about the people when they're talking. Are they talking about where they want to go or where they want to go away from, right? Very easy. And so you can tell by when they're talking, how, what, if they're trying to speak, we're again talking about analyzing, understanding, and about the problem and the issues. And you're like, well, no, wait a minute, we need to talk about our sprinkles, but they keep talking about the problems. They're an away from pattern. And the only way that you'll ever get them out of that is you have to go to their bus stop in their away from pattern to even get them to think about sprint goals. And I've had to do like things when I work on OKRs and anything goal oriented with those folks. They will always go with the problems first. So here's some language around that. So they have like, go for it, just do it, jump in. That's not about me, by the way. And then you have influencing language of away from, which is like, let's think about it now that you've analyzed. So if you start to realize you're around a highly like forward goal centric person, right? You want to use those words down there. If you're talking about somebody that gets highly motivated of moving away from a problem, right? That's what motivates them. Then you want to use that language. Let's think about it now that you analyzed. They're going to connect and relate more, and that's how you're going to get to their bus stop. So I'll give you an example of highly contextual. So I kind of did my whisper. I am generally, when it comes to work, I'm a toward person. I'm all about goals and meeting goals, what you want to achieve, what are your outcomes? Hello, I do OKRs, go figure, outcome-based culture. Makes sense, right? So away from, but I can give you an example. I'm not always like that. So if I can't zip up my skinny pair of jeans and I keep procrastinating and I finally say, okay, I'm going to go start working out, guess what motivated me? I'm moving away from a problem because I can't zip up my skinny jeans. And then now I'm going to work to the goal to probably, get down to the size of those jeans. But so it's highly contextual, but when we're working, you can pay attention to where how they talk, where they go. Is this gelling with everyone? Making sense? So if I go and I jump in and I talk about goals and want to do, and you're around a lot of away from, I probably lost them. And so that's why you want to figure out, how to make sure that you're balancing between that 50-50. And those of you that work in teams and you've been working with a long time, I bet you have people probably in these last couple slides, either you're thinking about yourself or probably somebody. Can you probably already put a face to some of these as I describe them? Anybody? Yeah. Maybe you, like, that's me. I probably do that more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now here's another one. Oh, let me move here. Oh, wait a minute. Demo time, Regina. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. All right. So Regina, are you ready?
I think so.
All right. I don't know, probably do like a split. I don't know if we can do that split view. Anybody? Can we do that? Or you can't control that, can you?
No.
Yeah.
They
All
would
right.
have to turn off their cameras so you can see.
All
everything.
right, let's roll with this. All right, so Regina, I just want to ask a simple question is, what do you want from the work that you do as a coach? Like, what do you want from that?
What do I want? What do I want out of, I mean, I want is a very broad question, right? So why do I do what I do? Maybe.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So I love helping people, right? At this point in my career, it's about creating an impact and also helping organizations and leaders find value, seek value, and find different ways of bringing value to their customers as well. But overall, it's I love helping people and bringing people together to make things happen and help them, kind of just get better at everything that they do. Now, I'm speaking very broadly. In Agile, there's a lot more specific things, but just overall.
Awesome. So if I heard you right, I heard that you like helping people and creating an impact and helping organization and leaders and finding value and bringing people together. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And what's missing? Did I miss anything in that?
I mean, there's a lot more to what I do.
Yeah, but just as in, like, what do you want from work? Did I capture some of the big nuggets that you shared?
I mean, you asked me why I do what I do and what I enjoy, right?
Yeah.
I think at this point in my life, my motivators are very different than when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
It's more personal satisfaction as well. I think maybe when I was younger, I had a job because, oh my goodness, I have to get a job, and it was about the title and my profession, also financially. I have different motivators now. And again, it's about making a difference. Also learning a lot. So learning is also part of what excites me right now, learning different things so I can have different tools in my backpack so that I can help others with these different tools.
Okay. So just to add a little bit from what I have, I'll start from the top is that you like helping people, creating an impact, helping organization and leaders in finding value. You talked about bringing people together. There's a personal satisfaction, making a difference and learning. And it's not about getting a job, as your profession. So now I'm going to say it a little different. Now, from what I heard, it sounded like you really care about just doing things that really satisfy you in life, and making a difference by just a variety of different things with organizations and probably some leaders there, maybe teams, and as in Agile. Now, which one probably connected with you more?
The last one.
The last one.
Because you summarized it very eloquently. I think you said it better than I did. But the first one, what I said, I was trying to find the right words and I was struggling a little bit. But you captured what I said very, very, very eloquently.
So I'm good at summarizing.
Yeah.
But if I was to use a word, I want to be happy, that you didn't say, and I start using words that maybe not even be in there, that criteria might be off. So if you said, I want to work less hours, and I assume that. So the criteria, and we're going to keep going here, is making sure that we capture those words, because when I summarized, I could have not hit that mark with you. Mm-hmm. And then, so part of this, if you do go there, is really making sure that you use that criterion words. I got lucky here. So why is this important? Why is this important to you?
To me or to the
Yeah.
group?
No, we're on our last criteria. We were doing your hot buttons.
Well, you're still doing that. It's important for me to understand what motivates me at this point in my life. And for me right now, it's about motivating others and finding the different techniques and things that I could do to motivate others, to help others perform better, right? To help others achieve their goals more and motivate them and inspire them.
And why is it important to inspire people?
Because that's one of my things. I don't know how to say it. That's part of who I am. That's part of my DNA.
It's your superpower.
Yeah, it's my superpower. I guess. Thank you, Marcela. Yes.
And why is it important for you to do what you like versus having a job?
Because then it's not a job. Then I'm excited, right? And I'm excited. I'm inspired to do what I do every day.
So we did criteria trying to find some keywords. And when I asked Regina what was important, I was actually trying to find if she was motivated toward or away. When she answered why it was important, what do you think, how she was motivated? Which way do you think it sounded more?
Toward.
Yeah.
Yeah, toward.
So if you were wanting to help Regina, you probably want to stay more in toward achieving things versus moving away from things, right? And so those words of possibilities and some options and looking forward, right? And doing different or anything that probably interests her is going to be probably more in that side. So is that starting to make some sense there? How it was so easy to pick up just in a simple conversation.
So you got me on that one. You made me nervous, Veronica, but that was a good exercise.
Yeah, I told you, we go with the flow on there. So let's see. I think you can, do you see my screen, the right screen there? To have fun. I want to make sure. So is it seeing the source now? The next one?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So we got a couple more here. And so we got the source. So this is can you really get others to do what you want? So where does a person find motivation? Are they motivated externally by sources or by their internal beliefs? Now this one's a 50-50 shot too. So 40% are mainly internal, 20% are equally internal and external, and 40% are mainly external. So a fun tip is you probably can think of teenagers, they're probably more internal, so they fit in that pattern, believe it or not, right? Because they're all about internal of how they think. And so internal folks decide and know themselves. I know. See where I'm going with that? Anybody have teenagers? I used to teach them, so I know them really well when I was a high school science teacher. They evaluate their own performance based on their own standards and criteria. They resist when someone tells them what to do or decide for them. Sounding familiar when I say teenage years? and outside instruction. So that is internal. External people that get motivated are really more concerned about what others think, right? They are more external. They want to know the norms. You know, these are people that might be more highly motivated, you know, when it comes to teaming and how people think. They're more like, what do you think? How should we do things, right? They never really come to be their own motivation decision. They always want to do consensus. So a lot of external people that you see a lot of consensus building are external. They're not internal.
How's that different from empathy?
So you can be empathetic, but how you're motivated is very different. So think about, well, I'm internal, but it doesn't mean I don't have empathy for others. But when somebody say, I hear somebody is struggling, I have deep empathy of what's actually happening, but it kind of, I internalize it and I kind of go into my own personal experiences on how I feel about that. It's never about how they feel in truth. When I start getting motivated, it's how it actually, what it did to me. An external person, you'd probably see a lot of empaths. They're highly external because it's always about the other person's feelings, right? It doesn't go into their internal. They're more empath of feeling the other person's feelings. I hope that makes sense. So external also could be where if, you know, like certain standards, right? They always want to know, well, what are the rules around that? Where somebody that's internal makes their own rules. They're like, well, you got to convince me if that makes sense for me to do it. Versus an external person says, oh, that's our rule and that's how we're going to work. No question asked. That's the difference between an external and internal person. So if you were probably thinking about highly autonomous people, where do you think they probably are? Internal or external?
Internal.
Internal.
Yeah. Because they, at the end of the day, want to think from themselves, and they're going to internal and rationalize how they're going to be motivated to do something. It doesn't mean they're not empathetic or listening to what other people say, but at the end of the day, however they decide and be motivated to get to action will be based on how they internalize whatever they perceived in that information. And highly autonomous people make decisions for themselves. I hope that's making sense.
Catching on.
Yep. So if you have a team that's highly external, they probably want directions all the time and they can't think for themselves. Or you have, you know, have you ever had teams that kind of are a little stubborn and you have to convince them to do something? It's probably because they're highly internal and they're rationalizing, do I even want to believe what you're telling me? I'm not sure I trust what you just said. So that's the difference between internal and external. External, they're highly motivated by the information externally. They don't have to rationalize it if they choose to believe or agree with it. Internal people do. So when you ask somebody, how do you know that you've done a good job? The difference between an internal and external is that an internal person would give you an answer that's how they think they did a good job, where an external person would be like how someone told them they did a good job. Right? So if I would ask somebody, how do you know you've done a good job? An external person would go, well, it's because I got feedback and everyone told me I did. Where an internal person say, well, because I actually saw the product and it looked great. And I think that it marked the things on my expectations. Right. I wanted this, and that, and that's what I got. Can you think of anybody when I describe that? Does that internal versus external?
Actually, I have a mix of the both of them.
Yeah, it's highly contextual. But let's think about, since we're kind of like talking about teaming and work in this session today, is when it comes to work, where do you think you probably more lie?
For me, it's external.
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong on this, because say you're a coach or like a scrum master and you're okay with that. You actually care what other people think, right? It's not about what you think. And so you're cool with that. Where internal, you know, it's there's no right or wrong, but it's how people are rationalizing some of those motivations. So if you're external and you're working with others, you're probably highly motivated by what you see, what you hear, what they're saying or doing, right? That's going to motivate you more externally versus what you believe it should look like, right? An internal person already has an idea in their head what they want, where the external person's looking for what is actually happening out there to get the gratification and motivation. Now, let's go to reasons. So this is how does a person reason? Continual quest to finding alternatives or preference to following established procedures. Oh, I have a lot of fun with this one. So when you work with a lot of people that are, especially at the execution level, you run into this a lot. And so this is like the right way or the way to do it. So options people will have lists of criteria. They're all about opportunities and possibilities and expanding options and choice. And so when somebody's trying to learn and understand how to do something, an option person can handle if you give them multiple ways how to do something. A procedure person, it doesn't like to choose. When you ask them questions about why, they go into telling how it happened. And then their facts, events leading to a story. So Tom, you're laughing. Are you probably, are you imagining someone right now?
There are some people on my team with that criteria.
And so the language you would use and what you do are highly different between these two, right? So I'm an options person. And when I'm working with highly procedural person, I drive them bonkers if I don't go to their bus stop, because I'm giving them like multiple options and they're just like, no, just give me one. They don't like that. They're the ones that say, tell me what to do. Tell me how to do it. I don't want to have to think of all these things. They're the ones that will say that stuff. Now, again, it can be highly contextual, but you'll start to know by the way that they're responding, how they're talking, right? And you can use the right language on there. That was a fun one because this one's probably easy to probably peg when you're working with people, right? Now, if you have a lot of options people in their language, right? These are things that you would say is, choice, break the rules, and that would motivate them. If I was to say there's the right way, there's procedures and you got to do this and this. Have you ever worked with people? They're like, oh, that's pretty restricting. I don't feel like I'm empowered because you're telling me exactly what to do. Where's my options? So you can see that. That's why it's funny when we use the word empowered, what it really means to all these people and what motivates them. If you think about all the things I'm sharing with you tonight. Pretty loaded is what I'm trying to say. All right, so we have our last one before we go into our activity here. So this one's a fun one, folks. Buckle up, because this is how a person reacts to change and what the frequency of change is needed. And you're going to love these statistics, guys and gals, folks, peeps. So the sameness pattern, where they want the same situation in the given context. These are the people, their change rate is about 15 to 25 years. That's a sameness pattern. There's about 5% in the population there. Then we're going to go into the sameness and exception. Now, these are the folks, their change rate of frequency is about every 5 to 7 years. And so they like to stay the same, but mainly progress, and change is not too drastic. And they use words, you'll leave it, those influencing words are words that you'll hear from them. And you'll hear this in agile transformations: more, better, improve. Well, guess who they're talking to? They're talking to the 65% population, folks. Yes, 65% of the population has a sameness with exception pattern every 5 years. Now you go figure. Now here's another one. Difference. These people love change. Guess who falls in that pattern? They thrive on want it to be constant and major. They will resist static and stable situations. They make up about 20% of the population, and their change rate is about 1 to 2 years. They're probably the earlier adopters of Agile, folks, is what I'm trying to tell you. And then you have the sameness and exception difference, which they like change and revolutionary shifts, as well as situations where things are evolving. And so this is about 10% of the population, and that change rate is about 3 to 4 years. I'm going to pause there if this makes you have some puzzles or interesting thoughts here, because we're all in the business of change, right? Agile is about change. What do you think about that? When 65% don't want it too drastic, and they only want to change about 5 to 7 years. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Is this about a preference someone might have, or more about, I'm just thinking there might be people that want change, like regular change, and they would probably fit into the difference category. But then there might be some people that change frequently because they need to, because their environment is very dynamic, but they do not always necessarily enjoy every part of it.
So remember, this is the person's mental model. And so if we're talking about work, which is in context to change and the decision factor, this is the person's mental model of really how they see change. So if they're in an environment that changes a lot, they might not be happy if they're in a sameness with exception pattern. They don't want to have too much constant change. Just because they're in it and they deal with it doesn't mean they are happy about it.
Right. So it's more about feeling what the other person feels about the situation rather than what actually happens, because it might be the case, as you said, that they are in a very dynamic and changing environment, but they not necessarily love every part of it.
Yeah. So if I was in a startup in a highly innovative entrepreneurial company, I probably would be very mindful of people that can't handle constant change. They probably aren't good in that environment, because startups change all the time. It's highly unpredictable, and you have to be comfortable with uncomfortable. It's probably not a good environment for them.
Fair enough.
Veronica, that's spot on. You know what I'm thinking about? Marriage, right? Because these are models. So if one partner is, let's say, part of the 65% with the sameness, and then you're married to someone who loves change and is difference, right? How do you adjust for that? Because either one of them is not going to get the change they're looking for, or the other one is going to be in some constant state of adjustment.
Yeah. And that's why and I love where you're going, because what Shell Rose Survey does is not just for work. I told you she has a husband motivator. She works with all different types of people.
Is that an app or you can download, or?
I'm sorry?
The husband motivator, is that an app you can download?
Go look it up. I don't know if it works or not, but
I will.
I kid you not. I thought that was a funny tidbit to bring in today. But what I'm saying is, yes, you can use all of what I'm sharing you today in any context. You can even think about it with your kids. You can think about it with anybody out there, because it's highly contextual, right? And it can be different in different situations. And so if you want to have a healthy relationship with certain people, like I think of my mother and her mental models, and I've been using the lab profile to help to kind of try to get in her world, because we are different, very different on that mental model state. And so I've tried some of these things, and I've had some really good breakthroughs because I went to her bus stop and used her words and her language and try to get her kind of along my way a little bit. And so I've actually reduced some of the friction sometimes I've had with her. I love my mom, but we're just a little different in our mental models.
So when you have two teams with, like, let's go back to say options and procedures, and how do you cater to them, right? Because some are like, just tell me what to do. I don't want you to provide options, while some are like, you give me procedures, you already lost me. I wanted options, right? So how do you go to everybody's bus stop in the same situation?
So there's some techniques, and I love where you're going is you almost have to suffice all parties. So we do that in training. She actually, I don't know if any of you have heard the format learning model. It's actually that's using these mental models, and so you kind of want to suffice the how and the procedure people, and then you can kind of go, okay, well, here are a couple options also that we can do. And so you kind of check the boxes in that situation where you're sufficing the people that want it, and then say, okay, if those of you that are looking for other ways, here are some options you can think about, right? So it's a fine line and tricky, especially as a team. So if you're working as a team, this is where it's important in some of your team building and forming activities is to understand where everyone's values are, what matters to them. And there's ways that we can do that. I mean, obviously it's not for today, but that's a great thing of learning about each other. And so that you know how to do that. Cause like, we want to appreciate everyone. It's getting to everyone's bus stop. And if everyone understood where everyone's bus stop, just imagine how much more we can effectively communicate with each other. We'll feel heard. We'll feel like we'll have a voice and our needs are being met as human beings. So it's definitely, you want to do both to answer your question directly, but it's also a great activity for them to learn about each other. So you're not the only one only doing it. I hope I answered your question.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, here's a little fun thing. Of course, I had to get into this because we do this in profession about organizational change. So I gave you some fun facts. So working with people with this trigger of that sameness and section pattern, I wanted to break this down just a little bit more because I think this is relevant to our profession. Evolutionary change is much easier for people to accept if you use like a word like that, then rapid change or different and things like that. 60 to 65%, I already told you. But they like gradual change. That's why frameworks like SAFE are popular out there, because there's a lot of reasons why people choose certain frameworks and how their transformations are working because of these patterns and the people that have chosen them. I hope this is making sense on some of these things I'm sharing. Because guess what? How your decision buying and how you choose frameworks go along with the things I'm sharing with you today, folks. So it's easier to learn something new if you're already gradually improving. You try to avoid difference language, like new, different, and shift. I love to use the word shift. I love that word, like there's no tomorrow, but I had to start changing it to evolve for obvious reasons. Was someone about to say something? So the sameness patterns you see here, I have on there. So this trigger is great when you want to improve your skills. You want to grow and improve. You see how I kind of highlighted the words that go with the sameness pattern? I did that on purpose. Evolutionary, gradual, gradually improving, better. Those are all for that sameness exception pattern, by the way. So it gives confidence where you're learning something new when educating your children, believe it or not. And training your dog, by the way. You probably would have never thought of that. Now, here's a fun trivia question, not really a trick. What decision factor pattern do you think is best for the role for driving change? I'm going to go back. She might not have memorized it. Which one do you think is ideal for that role of driving change?
Difference.
Yeah, and why?
Because they love the change. So if you want to convince someone else, it surely is better when you actually believe in that, right?
They won't run out of gas, will they?
Oh, they won't, certainly.
Yeah, because they're all about it, right? Now, how many people probably really are in those roles that are in the difference pattern?
We said only 20% of the population are different, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's not
And
that
if you're
much, but then
and if-
again,
and if you're an organization that has a sameness deception pattern, they're probably a diamond in the rough and they're trying to go through a transformation. Who's driving that change? So here comes Veronica, Agile transformation coach. Guess who the person is? I have the difference pattern. And that's a challenge with some people that are probably the early adopters and really love Agile. There's something about in their patterns, right? They might be in some of those other ones. And then they feel like, sometimes a fish out of water because why don't they want to change? Right? Maybe I'm talking about myself and my woes, but that's because I have a difference pattern. Hope this is making sense.
can you help someone or can you make someone change their pattern, like gradually?
There's my answer. So mental models, because it is based on your values and beliefs, can you change? Absolutely. I mean, that's what personal transformation is in your mastery, but it's really removing some of those limiting beliefs and mindset work. So say someone really wants to do different things and they don't really ever try something. So I think I was in a call where like a 7-year-old woman wants to start trying something new. And so she's really changing her pattern because her other pattern probably was. So it's absolutely possible. So if you're an organization that wants to create an entrepreneur mindset, you're going to have to change some mindsets and mental models, aren't you? Because
comfort zone.
Huh?
Comfort zone.
Yeah,
You
because
get out of your comfort zone.
the difference pattern people are very comfortable with uncomfortable. And so, yes, it's extremely possible, but you have to work on and help every individual at a time go through that personal transformation. Absolutely. But you probably need some difference people in there to help them through it because they're the ones that have the energy for it. All right. Are we ready to have some fun? What's our time check here?
It's 7:20. So
Okay.
we got about 10 minutes, but yes, let's
We
do
end at
this.
7:30?
Let's do this. Huh?
I thought we ended at 8.
No, 7:30.
Oh my God.
We can stay a little longer.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have time.
I think we're
you know
ending
what?
at
My
12 or so.
My whole schedule thing is completely off, folks. Like I have geared this to the hour time box. Okay. So anyways, I apologize, everyone. So maybe we'll do this as a group thing and not an individual activity then. And we're going to fast track this. Okay. So this is the suggestion model. Now, what this does, you can use this technique that you want to make a suggestion. So remember, we talked about people with their, how do we deal with somebody that is away from or toward from? And we want to make a suggestion. So how do we get them to come along our bus? So we make a suggestion and you give them 2 good reasons to do it. And so the first reason is to move away from a problem. And the second one is what the benefits that are going to give you towards. So then guess what? 50-50, you caught everyone. And then you use it in a positive, encouraging remark why your suggestion is easy to do. So I'm going to go and share over here what we were going to do in our activity. And we're going to do it together. Okay. So here's the situation. Do I need to span this? Do I need to zoom this up a little more?
See a little bit.
Is that better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So your team is struggling to swarm on work during the sprint. You have a recommendation to start focusing on the stories during the daily syncs in addition to the individual round robin updates. So here's what you know. The stories help focus on the end result, the value being delivered. It perpetuates multiple collaboration on one thing. It removes the natural silos of individual working. The team's not delivering all the stories they committed to at the beginning of the sprint, and the team is new and not everyone has worked with each other before they were formed. So I sprinkled a little away and toward in those bullet points. So which ones, if we were to start plugging this in, right? If we're going to make a suggestion, obviously we're going to think about what we suggest here, but let's just do the reason 1 and 2 for time's sake. If you were doing away, which ones in the bullet points are the away from that you would probably put in as a reason? It's going to help you understand what's an away from or toward. Which bullet points are moving away from something?
Remove the silos.
Okay, so that's one. And then any other ones?
The last 2 one, that team is not delivering, and then the team is.
Okay. So our towards are
The removed and the not, basically.
the which ones? Which bullet points? I didn't catch that.
The first two.
Yeah. So when we do this suggestion model, and all of you are going to get this, the key is, though, remember the criteria? You have to understand what they want to move away from, not what you think they want to move away from, what they want to move away from. So it's important for you to know that first, okay? The toward is things that you know that are the benefit to that, but you really want to know the problem. And so that's where, if you don't know what the problem is, I actually had a conversation with someone that was struggling with their product owner. And she said, well, me and this one designer are trying to get her to want to use wireframes instead of doing the whole shebang design. And we can't get her to agree. She just still wants to keep doing it the way she does. I said, well, do you understand what she cares about? Do you understand what her pain points, like, what are the problems? Because if you're just coming with that idea and she doesn't think it's a problem, you already lost her there. You're not meeting her at her bus stop. If she doesn't think it's a problem, it's not a problem to her. And so when you make suggestions, and when we do this, we want to make sure you know what they want to move away from. Does that make sense? But this is a great way to make a suggestion without you feeling like, if people get defensive, they feel like, you have people that might be hard to please. So, they're stubborn, they don't want to do something. But if you can find what they want to move away from, and then the benefits to that, you got them. This is actually a sales technique too. So that was the suggestion model. I know we got about 4 minutes, and I do apologize, everyone. I got my timings wrong for today. I don't know what it is. I thought this was longer, our meetup. Did you guys shorten it from last year? Is that why I'm all defunct?
It's a glitch in the matrix. We'll work on that. But again, this is great, Veronica, because now you have them craving for your presentation. So now everyone's going to want to go to the conference. So good job. Good job. I think we did this well.